like and subscribe to the channel. College students slash graduates of Reddit, what's the craziest thing you ever witnessed in your dorm slash residence hall? NSFW. One of my friend's girlfriends had a roommate that would masturbate almost every night. She said it sounded like someone vigorously stirring macaroni. I remember this story every time I cook macaroni. My dorm had a secret Santa thing, where your Santa would give you a task to do, and if you completed it, you'd get a gift. In the packed dining hall one night shortly before Christmas break, a huge, hairy, completely naked man jumps onto a table, tucks his junk between his legs, and screams, "Daddy only likes me when I'm a little girl." My roommate was his Santa, and as a reward for completing the task, she gave him a teddy bear wearing overalls. The slip and slide we had on the ground floor was pretty epic, but probably not as epic as this one girl. For some reason she decided to fuck 12 guys on her floor and turn the peephole backwards. Reverse peephole scene full style for everyone to see. I'm fairly confident she didn't graduate. A guy that was wasted and tripping balls went into the wrong room in the middle of the night and was thrown out of said room, across the hall, and through the wall into my old room. Turns out there had been a giant hole there that was cheaply patched up years ago, otherwise there should have been no way he could have gone straight through the wall. It was a cold night, but my roommate and I pushed test dresser up to attempt to cover the hole until someone could fix it. Good times. A bunch of guys in my hall collected some masks and dangerous looking items, pocket knives mostly. I think someone had a saw for some reason and pretended to have tied it due to a chair with a bag over his head, ketchup for fake blood and everything. They spent half the night on chat roulette with a sign that said tits or he dies. They didn't actually get any tits, but people's reactions were pretty great. That and the time one of the engineers dented a wall by firing a custom Nerf gun he'd built down the length of the hall are my only really crazy stories. When my now husband was in college, the thermostat to the whole building was in his room. He discovered he could make the fire alarm go off simply by moving it 1 degree up. So he made the alarm go off at 2 AM. He did this 3 times. In his same suite, he had a roommate who once asked him to shave his head. My husband did not oblige. The guy left one day, never to return. After a month, the janitorial staff came in with shovels, literally, and shoveled out ungodly amounts of porn from his room. One time, my roommate and I hatched quails in our dorm room. We started out with growing plants, then breeding better fish, and from there we kind of escalated to birds. Ordered a cheap incubator and the eggs online, and kept it in the corner of our room without having any real hope that any of them would hatch. 3 of them did, somehow, and they lived in our dorm room for a whole year without their finding out helps that they only grow to be about 3 inches tall. Boarding school here. MP3, phones etc. were prohibited, but a few people, including me, still had them. One of them was caught and expelled and all the charging points were covered up. There was one uncovered socket left, but it was 18 feet above ground and was for a big appliance. The solution we came up with was to steal stuff from the physics lab and make a voltage regulator. Then make 2 stacks of 3 people standing on top of each other. The top 2 guys worked the wires and got us a connection. 1 stack went up every day for almost a week before we were able to get a wire extender with a socket and get a permanent connection. It is still the craziest slash most innovative thing that I have personally witnessed. I lived on the 5th floor of monstrous 6-story building. One night in February, the fire alarms went off at like 2 AM and the building was evacuated. No fire, no nothing. We all went back inside. The next Tuesday, the alarms went off at the same time. This time someone had taken out the fire extinguishers and thrown them from the top of the stairwells where they exploded when reaching the ground. Obviously, you can't use elevators in a fire situation and the stairwells were a disaster. It wasn't so much fun running through that. This type of thing then happened every Tuesday night for at least a month. They eventually caught the people when they tried to hit 2 dorms back to back. Edit, grammar. I was a sophomore at University of Iowa, on the engineering dorm. The problem was that the main cafeteria of the campus was downstairs, so drunk people would get confused and wander to it, even though it was closed, then start having fun on other floors. It was Saturday night and pretty miserable outside, so most people were staying in, when we heard a scream, then a loud crack. When we checked on it, there was nobody in the hallway. There was, however, a large smear of blood along the wall, and the exit sign was broken. One of the guys decided to investigate, and found a huge guy in the bathroom, bleeding from the face and drunk. Turns out he had the brilliant idea of running down the hallway, leaping into the air, and headbutting the exit sign. Edit, since a few hawkers have asked, yes it was Burge. My roommate, a girl who lived across the hall, we will call her Sarah, and myself were sitting in the common room, which is situated right between the two dorm rooms, studying/chatting together. We were talking about place we'd traveled or something when the other girl's roommate comes down the stairs wrapped in a towel, presumably from having taken a shower, and into the common room. As she's walking toward the room, she casually says, "Hey Sarah, I'm going to bed now." Sarah says okay, and continues the conversation she was having with my roommate, and her roommate stops in her tracks and repeats, "I'm going to bed now." Sarah gets an embarrassed look on her face, gets up, and silently follows her roommate into the room and shuts the door. Guy down the hall was just nasty. Smelled bad, slovenly, but very friendly. He never went to class. You might be thinking gamer, but nope, he was a day trader. Always told us about his wins/losses for that day. Anyway, this was before mobile devices, and he hardly ever left his computer as a result. Traded in movements of pennies. So he had milk jugs to pee in. He told us proudly about how much time he saved by peeing in milk jugs. I presumed he'd dump them out routinely, but the first time I caught sight of his room I learned the truth. It was as messy as you'd imagine, but then I saw the jugs all over his room. The floor, windowsill, computer desk. My memory is hazy by now, but I'd say he had at least 21-gallon milk jugs full of piss in his room. To be fair, I couldn't verify that they were all actually full or just waiting in reserve, but at a glance at least some of them were clearly topped off. And honestly, how many gallons of piss is really acceptable to keep in your room? Freshman year I had a gay roommate, let's call him Wally. We got along pretty well. We had different social circles, but they overlapped a bit, so we would hang out on occasion. Wally had game, dude would bring guys back a fair amount and sexile me, but that was fine cause I did the same to him and that's just how it works, right? But eventually, he found a boyfriend. I figured that meant more sexiling for me, but oddly enough Wally's boyfriend would stay over every now and then, but Wally would never text me to ask if I wouldn't mind bailing for a half hour or whatever. Then one fateful night, I awoke to the sound of a creaking bed, and there it was, Wally having butt sex with his boyfriend. Apparently they'd been banging while I was asleep for months, and being a relatively deep sleeper, I was none the wiser. But there it was, my very own Brokeback Mountain. Oh, did I mention that his boyfriend had the same name as me? And when I awoke to find Wally plowing him, Wally just happened to be moaning his boyfriend's name, my name, TL. Doctor, I awoke to my roommate moaning my name, while he gave to his boyfriend dodgy style. I lived on the 9th floor of the dorms my freshman year. One wing was males and the other wing females. One of the girls on my floor received a giant, 10+ inch black dildo with a suction cup attachment as a gag gift from her friends on her 19th birthday. The guys on my floor thought it would be great fun to periodically steal, then chase each other around with said dildo, and beat the living hell out of each other with it. I was in my neighbor's room one day when his dorm mate busted open the door and threw this thing full force at him. Fortunately my friend was able to react quick enough to dodge out of the way. Unfortunately for us though, the dildo went careening full bore into the window behind him, smashed through it, and proceeded to fall 9 stories. We watched in horror and shock as this dildo fell and hit a freshman girl on the head, who immediately collapsed and began convulsing. Cops and paramedics came and took me, my 2 neighbors, and the poor girl who owned the dildo down to the campus police station. They put us all into an interrogation room where we waited until a detective came in with the dildo in hand. He then proceeded to slam down the suction cup end of the dildo onto the middle of the interrogation table. We all lost our shit. We couldn't stop laughing due to the fact that this thing was slowly wobbling back and forth during the whole interrogation. And don't worry, the girl who got conked in the head with this thing was fine in the end. 2 things. Same dude. We had a guy whose room was at the end of the hall, so it had a little extra space next to his door. A little alcove. We had tour groups come through our dorm with prospective students and their families. Well, on one of those days he tore out a bunch of pics from his Playboys and posted them all over his door and on the walls outside his room. He took 3 chairs from the common room and put them outside his room as well. He then had a sign that said the bitches and hoes waiting room. A mother went absolutely ballistic when she saw that. He got into deep shit for it to a few months later when another tour group came through. Our Bill, who was a total asshole, was giving kind of a speech to the high schoolers and their families. So our buddy fell out of his room in just his boxers and his hands tied behind his back with a sock in his mouth. He spit the sock out and started yelling, "Bill, untie me. This isn't funny." Our was humiliated. The parents went absolutely nuts over it. Our buddy was kicked out later that day. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel and like. Share your stories in the comments.